Welcome back, everyone. On today's episode of Woodstove Chat, I'm going to be finishing out the handles on these three knives. I've got my coffee, got a good fire, and we got some toppings. So let's get to it. So with the handles already put on these knives, now it's time to do the shaping. Of course, they've already been profiled. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay them out, put me some lines on here where I can have some reference points, reference lines. And we'll be shaping these to a specific shape, kind of Coke bottle-ish style handles. These two are Pro Cut blades, and I got an 80 CRV2 drop point. Something a little different, no bolsters, nothing fancy, which brings us to our first topic. So I've seen a post a few days ago, and I've seen this many times, and I always kind of just, I want to roll my eyes, but anyway. But someone will say, I make using knives, not fancy, pretty knives. All of my knives, every one of them that I make is user knives. Fully functional. When I send a knife out of here, it's fully functional. My fancy Damascus knives will cut the same as these here. They're going to be the same thing. They will perform the same way. It's personal preference what people like, And a majority of people like knives with guards and bolsters and things like that. Now, some people like Damascus and San Mai, you name it. And it's not just because they're pretty. And it don't have to be Damascus or San Mai or Go Mai or something fancy. Guards and bolsters and things like that are basic things to me on a knife. You don't have to have them. These are not going to have them. It's just a different knife preference that people want. I personally like them. I like either or. I like them with guards, with bolsters. I like some without. And I use both. But it's just preference. But the thing about it is I can make a knife that is fancy, that is fully functional, and will perform the same way as these user knives. I call these banger knives. And it's just knives I'm not worried about scratching up, getting bolsters scratched up and that sort of thing. Even though they will perform the same. The knife I carry in my hunt bag has bolsters, and it's a stainless blade. And I've got a couple Damascus blades that I carry and hunt with and skin deer with. And it's not about fancy. It's just what you prefer. So when I see a comment like that, and you can go look at their work, and that'll kind of tell you a few things, but there's no need to dig on somebody because they make fancy knives. Fancy knives that will perform too. That'll hold up just the same as your banger knife. I'll back mine up. I'll put it that way. Just something that I saw this week, and I've heard it many times. And to dig on somebody just because you can't or won't or don't want to learn or won't try harder. It's not that you necessarily can't. Maybe you just don't want to. But anyway, just a little bit of a rant there. Let's move on to the next topic. All right, this one here, I've kind of covered a couple times in other videos, other Woodstove Chat videos, but it's a little bit of a different answer, an answer that I haven't included. And when people talk about asking, how do you market your knives? How do you sell them? I'm not selling, I'm not moving knives. And having covered all the other reasons why you're not, marketing, do people know you? All of that stuff that I've already covered. The other one is, what kind of knives are you making? Who are you targeting? Are you targeting high-end collectors? Are you targeting hunters, fishermen? Are you targeting fantasy collectors or fantasy knife people? If you're making Lord of the Rings knives, or at least that's your goal, and expect to be selling them out, make sure you have your target audience secured. You have to know your customers, know who you're after. My primary customers are outdoorsmen, and they buy everything from mosaic Damascus skinners to bangers, just like I'm making here. And I know that's who my target is. That's who my customers are, and they've been there for many, many years. And so I've made a few fantasy knives, and I had to auction one of those because there's no deer hunter out there going to carry a Viking sax around with him. It's just, that's not who I target. Most of those folks are collectors and wall hangers. They put them on the wall. So if you are making those, make sure you know your audience, you know your customers, and that's the only way you're going to be able to move them is you have a base there that has been buying them or wants to buy them. I don't necessarily make knives that I want to make all the time. There's some knives I'd like to make that are way outside of what my audiences want or what my customers want. And that is, pet projects and hobby projects and stuff that really challenge me that hunters are not going to carry. I've made a couple swords and things like that, but it's not my customers. But I would still like to spend more time doing it. I'm just not there right now as far as, I do this for a living. I can't just break away and work on projects like that. Now, sometimes I will set one off to the side, tinker with it every now and then, but it not being a full-time hobby, it's a full-time job. I have to work on customer requests and what they want. Until that changes, that's what I'll be doing mostly. All right, so this topic's kind of out there a little bit, but having spent most of my life working in the construction industry and petrochemical industry mainly, heavy equipment, pipelines, welding, structure steel, that kind of thing, I've experienced a lot of safety issues and mishaps and some terrible things. And, I've had things get in my eyes, I've been burnt, I've been hurt, but over the years, I learned to make safety a priority. I could go into this very deeply about the construction world and things that I've experienced and witnessed and saw. And I brought it with me to the shop. I learned to protect my eyes because I've laid in the hospital with them taking material out of my eyes, metal out of my eyes more than once. And, some facilities I worked in made you wear safety glasses with monogoggles over your safety glasses and a face shield. It's tough working in those conditions. Hot, you're wearing fire retardant clothing, you're in a chemical plant or a refinery or something like that, depending on their rules, grinding and a lot of stuff going on around you, grinding and gouging and, art gouging. And I've got metal in my eyes, so it makes it difficult. Everything fogs up. Now, in my shop, I don't do that. But one thing I do is wear safety glasses. I'm religious about it because I don't want to go lay on the hospital bed anymore. A lot of people say, here you go with this safety cop. I mean, I've managed our safety program in our facility for a long time before I became a manager there, but I know because I've seen so much of it. People that, dilly-dally in the office world and, walk up and down hospital halls don't know what what I'm talking about. They may have got a piece of trash in their eye before in their shop, but they haven't seen some of this stuff, and it's horrible. Some of it's horrible. Now, specifically what I'm talking about is, not just safety glasses, wearing sandals while you're forging and Crocs and things like that. It's just unbelievable. I mean, you get a piece of hot slag down in your Crocs or in your sandals, you're not going to get them off fast enough before you get a third-degree burn. And having big, long beards and working with grinders and things, I've seen some horrible things happen with grinders. It just blows my mind at the lack of common sense. It happens this quick, or it catches on fire. I just don't know how, and in the summertime, it's so hot, I don't know how you stand it. But that's personal preference. The thing about it is, pin it up or something when you're working with rotating equipment. We just have to use common sense. You don't want to burn yourself up or get a grinder wheel wound up and your throat cut because it got in your, beard that's this long hanging down in it. I see a lot of posts sometimes, and I get text messages all the time. People send me pictures of knives or emails and asking my opinion about them. I do that. I will send them to my mentors and ask them, what do you think about, what's going on here? And I want to know the truth, but not everybody does. So I'm somewhat reluctant to give advice or my opinion about a knife. And, there a lot of them are common issues with knives, and mostly fit and finish, which kind of goes to that first topic we had. You need to learn how to do fit and finish, making something pretty and non-functional just because you do a good fit and finish job. Learn how to fit and finish. Just because you can beat something out to a sharp, pointy, prison shank object doesn't mean you're there. And personally, I don't think you're ever there. Just like my buddy Steve Schwarzer will tell you, just when you think you have arrived, you've just begun. Because I learn every day in the shop. And when somebody asks me their opinion about a knife, you know, it's hard really to tell with photos unless you give me several angles, and then I still, you know, would like to hold it. Right off the bat, there's several things sometimes that you can see in a photo. And, you know, if you point that out sometime, that people quit talking to you or they get combative, I really don't understand that. So I'm kind of reluctant about that. If you really want to know, that's fine. But if you don't want the truth or want the opinion of the person you're asking, don't ask them. Because I like to tell you exactly what, you know, I think about something, and that's what I expect. When I show my knife to master smith or a peer, what do you think here? You know, they'll pick it up and look at it. I'm going to look at several things: plunge lines, ergonomics, is the blade straight, all kind of things. I still don't know how you heat treated it. And that's another thing people would ask me, what do you think about so-and-so's knives? And it's somebody that I really don't know. I said, well, the knife looks pretty good from the photos. I don't know how it was heat treated. You know, that stuff you can't tell. Some of that's going to come through your reputation, and you just can't identify there by looking at a picture. And that's why somebody asked me what I think about this knife, and it's kind of cheap priced. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's my answer. Next topic. This is a good one here for me because I always want to laugh when somebody has a fillet knife and show how it flexes. Well, there's no magic in it if it flexes. The magic is if it returns straight, that's good. But the reason it flexes is because it's thin. Thin steel flexes easier than thick steel. There's no other reason. So I get a lot of people ask me if I make a boning knife or a fillet knife, and a lot of the knives I make are boning / fillet knives. I use them for both, and it's what I prefer. I don't like a real flexible fillet knife because I will use them when I'm boning deer and or a roast or something like that. And at the same time, I can fillet a redfish. I don't fillet brim. I fry them whole. You know, that's just my preference. So most of the fish I'm filleting, I don't need a real thin knife. And because it's thin, it's going to flex. There's no other magic there. The bad thing would be if it didn't return when it flexed. It'd be a horrible heat treatment, and that's a whole different topic there. But I get this question all the time. How does it flex? You know, when I show a picture of a boning knife or fillet knife. Well, this one is 3/32, a little larger. It's not going to flex very much. That's my answer. If it was 1/16, it'll flex. So here's one right here that flexes I made recently for a specific reason. And it's flexing because it's super thin. No other reason. Just something to think about. This is a question for my viewers. On most of my videos, they'll have a little music in places and some places not. Sometimes I'll make videos with no music. And personally, I like videos with music. I don't even need to hear you talk. I just like to be entertained and watch. If I want a tutorial, then yeah, I don't want music. I want to hear what you got to say. I don't always do tutorial style videos. So if you want to hear grinding and things like that, you know, there's people that do. I want to hear the tools running and things like that. But I will get comments all the time with people being pretty rude about music. And my question to you is, what do you prefer? You like music or no music in a video? You know, some people like music but don't like it too loud, don't want it overpowering. Well, if I'm talking, I usually don't have any music. But if I'm just grinding or, you know, cutting something and you know, there'll be some music there in most cases. And I don't know, just a question for you. So I hadn't been but about 30 minutes off the deer stand, got down about 10 o'clock, come up here to work on the handles, these knives, and didn't see any bucks. Saw does, but they left it right at daylight. I was out there on the stand around 10 minutes to 5, and I could hear them but couldn't really see them. But I have a trail camera there. They were showing up. But they've been coming. I've been seeing them, but no bucks. But we have been seeing some bucks on our other trail cameras, and we've been harvesting some. And over on my other channel, Bonded by the Land, we've been making those videos and all. But so we got the handles on these knives finished, and they're looking pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Woodstove Chat. If you got any comments, questions, anything, just leave them down below. I appreciate you watching. I enjoy these, and I appreciate your feedback. A lot of you give me topics, and I really like that. So I want to thank my patrons. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.